You have to introduce yourself to the camera. So it depends if you show it to the other committee members. That's just the layout of the room. So it's 10 o'clock, and I'd like to go live, please. We're live now, thank you. Good morning, members, officers, and viewers. Welcome to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee meeting. It is being conducted as a hybrid meeting in accordance with remote meeting protocol and council standing orders to ensure that we continue to make democratic decisions in an open and transparent manner. For those attending remotely, I would remind you that this meeting is being streamed live to the public, so can I remind you to switch off your camera and microphone when not speaking to the meeting to improve the quality of the recording. I ask remote members also to switch on their chat functions and use this when they wish to speak. Please do not speak until I invite you, and remember to switch off your camera and mic afterwards. This is a relatively small meeting. Online voting may be required together with a vote of the members present in the chamber. So before I declare a vote, I will ensure all members' votes are collected. As well as being broadcast live, a recording of this meeting will be uploaded to the council website for public viewing and training within the council. A Welsh translation of the meeting can be provided upon request. Right. Do we have any apologies for absence, please?
Councillors Lauren James and Medi David.
Thank you. Do we have any declarations of interest at this point? No. Right, thank you. And minutes of the previous meeting, there are some omissions of the minutes which we're aware of, which will be corrected in due course, but general points of accuracy, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. The previous meeting, I raised an issue about a member who was in attendance at the meeting before in July. We still haven't mentioned their name. So we've just got to hear again. The committee asked for clarity about a committee member who needs to be recorded as an attendance at each meeting. We need to put the name of the member. I can't even remember now. It was back in July of who the person was who attended the meeting in July. It was down as and I appreciate they're not complete yet, but the ones we've got in front of us, we don't have any recommendations on there, which I think is very important. We did agree to have previous recommendations we've made available to Cabinet to ensure that we can find out which ones have been taken forward. And then I've got my personal concern because I raised it last year and raised it at the meeting last week. And this is the issue about community integration. I think that Army also raised it. We don't seem able to state. In the minutes, it says a committee member welcomed the report and queried whether previously raised concerns regarding the fortnightly meeting with police and with community representatives being followed up. There's a wider point in that, was ensuring that if we're having these community liaison meetings with police, then we need to ensure that all areas of the community are involved. And that includes young people from wine glass or Baptist, wherever it is, to encourage community cohesion rather than being seen as a separate one if we're talking about community issues and concerns. And each time I raise it, it seems to get eradicated from the minutes. It's on the recording. I don't think it's unreasonable. And if Meek can hear me, he's also raised similar concerns at the last meeting and last year.
Thank you, Councillor Evans. I do confirm that this is what was raised last week. I can't remember last year.
No, I appreciate that, but it was one of our recommendations.
Yeah, we can pick up the issue regarding the minutes from July for the next meeting. We can also include the recommendations and comments which were added as well, so we get those corrected. It's only because that we had to get them done within the 5 days as I requested, but we can certainly sort that out for the committee.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And the minutes from last year's report be shared as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Anything else on page 1?
Sorry, Chairman, that has his hand raised.
Councillor Arnold.
Yeah, we're still on the minute, Chair, are we?
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know exactly which page, but it does come where it says that I think the net zero by 2030 was mentioned. I asked for a precise definition of that, and I don't think it appears in the minutes. So I just think it's, you know, for the future, it would be good for us to know precisely what we mean by it.
Thank you, Councillor. It wouldn't appear in the minutes because it was definition requested. So we'll ask the committee clerk to obtain that definition for us.
That's not Councillor, thank you.
Okay. Is that okay, Councillor Arnold? Yeah, okay. Page 2, page 3, page 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, page 9. With the points that we've already discussed, we rule those as a reasonable record.
Yeah, but
Reasonable or true, Chair?
No,
Reasonable, fine.
okay, if you remember every word you could say last.
Reasonable,
Councillor
thank
Evans.
you.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Wright, seconded by Councillor Evans. Okay, all those in favour? Thank you very much. I can't see any online hands. We've got a majority of saying in favour. Okay, thank you. Right. Moving on. Item 4. Corporate plan, well-being objectives and priorities. Who's going to present on this, please?
So, Chair, this is a joint effort from the direct team and also by Gwener who's standing beside Jenkins this morning. So I'll start us off and then colleagues will talk us through the various teams' objectives in the order that they run. So for new members of the Scrutiny Committee, it seems the purpose of the corporate plan is a very key document for Newport City Council in that it sets out those strategic priorities and objectives for the next 5 years. It's not a delivery document, so therefore it's not operational in nature. There are no actions within it per se, but it sets out where we are headed as a city council over the next 5 years. Also, it chimes with the well-being goals of the Future Generations Act. Really, really important. We have to set out as a council how we will comply with those goals, and why wouldn't we? Long-term prevention, goals there to protect the social, economic, and environmental well-being of the city. Within the document, as it evolves, we will endeavour to set out how we want to deliver both statutory and non-statutory services. We deliver, I think, a range of functions across the council. If you broke every one of those down, there's probably about 800 functions we as a local authority deliver. So it's really important that what we do is sustainable, but also delivers to the needs of our communities and, and what the data is telling us, and also what the community feedback is telling us. Clearly, the plan also has to reflect the regional and local and national context. So the national context, well, I think we've seen such turbulent times in the last 3 years and continue to do so with the changes within UK government and Welsh government level, but need to be mindful of the evolution of the corporate joint committees, the Chraffu regional framework, but also, as I said, some of the work that's ongoing at a UK level with Levelling Up, Shared Prosperity Fund, and also the whole sort of three ports tapped on agendas as well. So things are changing by the week, not even by the month currently. In addition to that, obviously, we want to make sure, first and foremost, that the plan delivers for local people. This is a plan that, at the end of the day, we are an organisation which is governed by a democratically elected set of members. So we, first and foremost, this has got a plan, making the very best for the city and for the local authority. So very much driven, as I said, by data and feedback coming through from residents. Currently up to consultation on the draft objectives because time is of the essence. We haven't got the detail, and that consultation hasn't concluded just yet, but positive feedback so far, what we see in terms of the early stages of the consultation, and interest in the place and infrastructure sustainability, very much key areas coming through as a result of initial feedback. So hand over to now Chair for the next slide, and then I'll come back to talk about the economy and skills and objectives before the remaining directors finish on the rest of the slides.
Okay.
Okay, just following on from that bit then. So the development of the corporate plan. So this is our 5-year, high-level strategic document for the organisation, which describes how we're going to deliver against the wellbeing objectives are set out in the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act. So within that, we set our own themes. So they're within the plan. Majority of this conversation is probably around those 4 themes and what they actually mean for the organisation. And Bev touched on some of this already. So, this is not a document that, is created by chance. We've gone through an election this year. We have an administration which has got political priorities. I think also our job is really to pick that up and look at the internal external pressures and to operationalise those political aspirations through policy development and strategies. So it is an amalgam really of those things. So also looking at the sort of internal challenges and risks that we've got in the organisation. We've got the climate change plan in place. Digital strategy will follow on from this corporate plan, which will be an enabler to some of the activity within there. We have to look at how we invest our finances with our medium term, so how it fits in with our medium term financial planning and those challenges is incredibly important. Our workforce strategy again, which is an enabling document which will come out of this. So I'll talk a bit more about those things towards the end. And also then operational service delivery challenges we face there. And then the internal things, so I'm not going to get into the bit better what we talked about, but we're in some challenging times because of both domestic and global issues. So, lots of stuff on the news around cost of living, etc., and those impacts on both us as an organisation, but also on our communities to support that. The Ukraine conflict, to that, changes in legislation, COVID, and the after effects of dealing with that as a pandemic on both the organisation and our communities and businesses operating within the city. Environment, Bev said that obviously that's incredibly important to our community. So how do we support sustainable operation, which has a minimal impact on the environment, and also the demand management, looking at actually demands for the future, trends in population, that's going. So out of all of that, what we've come up with are 4 draft wellbeing objectives and themes, which we're going to talk through in a bit more detail. So economy, education and skills, environment, structure, preventative and equitable community and social care, inclusive and sustainable council. Okay.
Thank you, Rhys. That was Rhys Cornwall, and you're the director for.
Sorry, I do apologise. Corporate services and transformation.
Okay, thank you. Because as you can see from the recording, nobody will be able to recognise you, so we need you to tell us who you are, please.
Magnifying glass that comes around.
You can just say that.
So after me now, Chair, if that's okay.
Okay.
So very much for that.
Owens, Chief Executive.
As members of the committee, you would be aware, given my previous roles in the city council, this is the theme very, very dear to my heart, because I think without sustained economic growth, how did the city and how do the people of the city benefit longer term? What we want to try and achieve over the next sort of 10-15 minutes is why these objectives have been chosen and why we've got to this position. So I think we can't look forward without looking back. And if we think of, what's been achieved over the last 5 to 10 years, there's an awful lot that's happened in Newport. We've seen obviously the delivery of Clark's Tower, the delivery of the market programme in terms of the city centre. Also, we've also seen significant investment in areas such as compound semiconductors, etc., etc. So an awful lot. And when we come to the annual report next week, I think that will certainly or hopefully do justice to the amount of effort and the work with partners that has delivered some really successful stories in Newport. But where are we heading over the next 5 years? Well, I think economic growth can't be looked at in a window of 5 years. It has to be looked at in a far longer window of 20 years, in my view, because you have to be heading long term to ensure that as I said, the city is sustainable going forward. So the objectives that we've drafted so far are there in front of members for consideration. Very much a cradle to grave approach in terms of economic growth and sustainability. So we're trying really hard to link up education, skill development into the sort of investment that's coming into the city. We are working through a replacement local development plan. So again, that's going to set out, the strategic context in terms of our investment sites for employment. But also within the next 5 years, we'll be looking to deliver a new city centre master plan. The last city centre master plan was very much about sites within the city centre that needed a strategic focus. This will be a little bit different to that under the next stage of the corporate plan. Also, the economic growth strategy has recently been refreshed, as well as the recovery strategy. So again, at some point during the lifetime of the corporate plan, they will also be updated. As I said, from 1 to 8 in terms of those objectives, hopefully they give the breadth to members that members can consider, as I said, as spreading the growth across the communities in a sustainable way as well. And I think, Rhys mentioned about using the sort of priorities of the administration and how we form those into what the priorities of the corporate plan need to be. Just very much also about working collaboratively with residents and developers to make sure that the services we provide, the opportunities that we provide through economic growth are very much accessible and for both visitors, families and businesses alike. So I think that's really all I wanted to say on that, Chair. The objectives speak for themselves. Obviously, there'll be suites of measures and performance indicators and outcomes that will go alongside these as the plan evolves further, as we receive feedback from Scrutiny this morning and also from the citizens report.
Thank you. Chair, Paul Jones, Director for Environment and Sustainability. So I'll pick up the second theme, which is on environment and infrastructure. It seems like yesterday, or certainly only a few days ago, that we were actually here in this very Scrutiny group discussing our climate change plan, and that shows that some of this work has already in fact started. Just back before the election, the council declared a climate and nature emergency, and this sort of theme really embeds that into where we go forward. So it's not just about our net zero by 2030 approach, but also about identifying and understanding our impact on biodiversity and our environment, and in terms of ecological collapse and helping us to work against that. Also encompassed in this area is our infrastructure, and as Bev talked about, we're the fastest growing area of Wales. Everyone over the last decade has seen considerable expansion of the city. And in order for the city to still work effectively, we need to understand how our infrastructure in terms of road, public transport, etc. will respond to that. And it's important as we go forward with plans for further growth of the city that we back that up. The other thing we sort of link into this is significant investment in modern forms of transport, public transport, in the Light Burns report, which will see delivery starting of this 5-year period, and so some exciting projects for Newport to take forward and to try and benefit our local communities. I'm not going to go into detail much on the climate change. I think we talked that to death last week. But But yeah, I think as we go forward, it's important key golden thread throughout our work that we do over the next 5 years.
Okay, thank you.
So the next objective, so Mary Ryan, Head of Adults and Community Services, on behalf of Sally Jenkins, the Director for Social Services. So this objective regarding preventative and equitable community and social care is really the cornerstone of our service plans for both adults and children, and services that we deliver across the country, across the city. We're recognising that Newport has a very rich and diverse cultural communities which come together, support each other to improve the areas they live in and safeguard our most vulnerable citizens. So over the next 5 years, our service plans falling out of the corporate plan, we're aiming to have a much more cooperative approach with service users, families, carers, health, landlords, community and social care sectors to work together to tackle inequality. This will ensure that communities remain safe places and contribute towards making Newport a great place to live, work and enjoy. We will seek to have a sustainable social care sector, one that is able to ensure people, including carers, can get early intervention and access to the services they need, and that will build on the work we've already done to date. And there's more we need to be doing in that, and that's addressing the adult social care plan. We also want to ensure that people can be supported to live independent lives, and they are appropriate to their needs. This means supporting more providers that are focused on the well-being of their residents, service users, carers and staff, and not for profit.
Okay, thank you, Penny.
Back to me.
Yeah.
Okay, so recall Director of Corporate Services and Transformation, or Transformation and Corporate Centre. Okay, so this is an inclusive being sustainable council. So this is both got an internal and external focus for us as an organisation. So I suppose I'll start off with the sustainability bit of that. So not only are we required to ensure that we deliver sustainable services as a result of the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, but clearly that's obviously a very important thing for us to do without that. So what that's about is about how we manage our finances, how that relates to service delivery, how we mutually buy for money on our service provision, how we invest in opportunities that support socio-economic improvements across the city. So it very much ties into some of the other themes about how we essentially manage our resources to ensure we do that. Again, I'm not going to go into the climate change plan, which you've had here, but also we've got some serious commitments in that around our assets and net zero carbon by 2030. So there's some real challenges in there around how we do that. And then the other bit of this really is looking outwards. So how do we deliver services to individuals? So those of you who are familiar with our coming to the end of our current digital strategy, which is got a strapline of digital first in there, or digital by default. Actually, the move on from that now is essentially putting the citizen at the heart of the service provision, digital service provision, where it's appropriate and necessary, and actually making sure we get the right services and right interfaces for those services for the right people at the right time. So using quite a lot of our intelligence, our and some of the work we do through Newport Intelligence, how to ensure that we've got those right services in place. And I think that's all on that one. And then to me again with the next bit. So I think really important for the committee. So monitoring and reporting of the corporate plan. So I think this committee is having the annual report of the current corporate plan next week, or in the next couple of weeks. So Local Government Elections Act has put some additional responsibilities and requirements on local authorities. So we will be publishing an annual corporate wellbeing and self-assessment report. So that will come through the Scrutiny Committee in due course in the coming years. This will be an overview of our progress against that corporate plan and the objectives in it, and also the performance improvements we put in place. So that act requires us to actually undertake self-assessment activity, independent verification on that as well. So it's a different regime around that annual reporting for the corporate plan. I mentioned, I'm going to cover a couple of these things off in one go. I mentioned some of the supporting documents really that support this corporate plan. So transformation plan is really important. So once we've got the corporate plan finalised and it's agreed by council, out of that comes the transformation plan, which will be a 5-year plan about how we're going to deliver those transformational changes that are associated with this plan. We've also got some other strategies to support the delivery of this. So we shortly be finalising the digital strategy, the new digital strategy. We have things like the Welsh Education Strategic Plan, Strategic Equalities Plan, which I know is coming through this committee as well, Welsh Language Strategy, etc. So there are a series of other strategies and supporting documents in support this. It's really important. I think Bear mentioned it right at the off. This is a strategic document which shows our intent and where we'd like to go to. It is critical that that is then reflected in the 11 service plans, which will go through the scrutiny process. So we've currently got service plans that reflect back to the previous corporate plan. They will, shortly after this is finalised, then look to the new corporate plan and actually operationalise in a way that actually shows us the activity, the action, the performance measures and the timescales associated with delivering the various aspects of the corporate plan. Okay, so that goes through the scrutiny process, into our performance scrutiny committees, and then subsequently a bit of the annual report. So it's really important to talk about that. So some of that detail is not in this, but it will be in things that go through it. And then our golden thread around the delivery and monitoring of that corporate plan then ties down into our teams, individual service team plans, and then individual members of staff and their performance measures, their objectives for the year, and actually how they tie into the corporate plan. So we've got a strong golden thread throughout the organisation there about individual activity, service activity, directorate activity, all the way up to the delivery of that corporate plan. Okay. I think I'll hand it over to Janice then for the last bit of the presentation.
Thank you. Janice then, Policy and Partnerships Manager. Just wanted to talk through the next steps now for the corporate plan and where we go next. So we're hoping for some feedback and some recommendations from this committee this morning, and those will be considered before we present the final version of the plan to Cabinet. This will be alongside the consultation responses that we've received from residents and businesses on the wellbeing theme, which Beverly mentioned first thing this morning, and early indications are that there's some really positive feedback from residents and from businesses. Then the plan is for the final plan to be agreed by Cabinet in October before being presented and approved by Council in November this year. And as we talked about the golden threads, the service plans, the 11 service plans then, which kind of underpin and give the operational detail of the corporate plan, will be presented to scrutiny committees in November for comment and recommendations, with the final versions being agreed by each responsible Cabinet members.
That's complete. Thank you. Obviously, members. It was said earlier, some of these issues we dealt with before, but this is the report in front of you. All questions are relevant and, of course, permitted. Would like to start, please.
London. Well, I welcome the report.
Councillor Bright.
Yes, sorry, Councillor Bright. Thank you, Chair. Yes, welcome the report and the plan of the Carter. Just overarching regarding training, and especially picked up last committee meeting and under staff performance. So just wondering how we're actually delivering this training.
Excuse me, Councillor Bright. You're talking to the second.
Yes, sorry, Chair.
Item.
Okay, it does sort of come under page 17, staff performance. I think.
Should we find something to link it to?
Yeah, I'm sure I can. But
Would you like to leave it till the next?
Okay, yeah, I'll take on board, Chair. I'll leave it to the next one. Thank you.
Yeah.
In that respect, you know that.
Councillor Evans.
Okay, Chair. I appreciate this isn't a delivery document and all the aims and objectives are very admirable. And that's fine. I guess there are the political priorities, and I hope next time the leader of the council also comes along to there. But I guess the question is what does success look like? How can we ensure it's achieved on the financial thing and the timescales? So, I mean, when it comes to things like more pocket parks and green open spaces in the city centre, that will come through, I'm sure, in the performance plans and will come back to us at some stage. The one issue I do have is about the consultation, because if you went down to the city centre today, talked to people who would not give possible or positive responses, you know, let's say from businesses either. I go to office to networking events. There are a lot of people out there who are very frustrated, angry about the city centre, about antisocial behaviour, about concerns about jobs, concerns about things like that. And I did have a look at one of the consultation documents online, and it was almost, from memory, it's almost like saying, is this a good objective? Well, they're all good objectives. And I think we need to try and do some independent research, try and focus on various groups of people around the city to ensure that that is fed back in. Because not all businesses, some businesses clearly will be positive, but not all businesses are going to be positive. That's the current issues. And I guess that's the critical feature, is there might be a little FEMA consultation next time, but remember, once you send that staff, we pretty much, what do you think of this objective? Is that good objective? Well, they're all good objectives. And I think we need to just go back a step and try and get an honest appraisal so that can feed into the plan in the long term to ensure we are getting a more open view of issues and concerns which affect a lot of residents across the city.
Thank you for that. Before I call you in, Councillor Rheoli, could I just say that this has been a constant theme from this committee over the last 5 years that I'm aware of, how consultation is achieved, and there's been criticism of the amount of weight that's placed on the bus due to the demographics for the people who actually use the bus. And we did request that money be set aside for properly structured consultations to be carried out. Is that reasonable?
Yeah, I think the point you raised in the past was, you know, somebody actually going around the city centre and talking to people with a clipboard and not long-winded things, so just talking to people. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Rheoli. Make that.
Yeah, come in. Yeah, Chair, can I just say, yeah, fully welcome the draft corporate plan for the next 5 years. Lots of things that you can really, you know, sort of appraise, identify with, and you could see that things that are happening to sort of justify some of the statements made there. But I feel particularly on objective 1, economy, education, skills. Now, I've got no issue with education, and I think skills, I think we're doing quite a lot there. We're talking about Newport, the fastest growing city in Wales, which may be true, but it's only when you go sometimes across the border and see cities in England that you feel really we have a long way to go, especially on, you know, on the feel about sort of people being able to really sort of spend and, you know, sort of more bustling cities. I know the closed shops, you know, the shops that are closed down and all that are a function of lots of cities, you know, Wales, England, probably Scotland as well. But Newport, we do seem to have an issue. We do seem to have a problem. And sometimes our sources for information is the South Wales Argus, unfortunately, because I don't see sort of, our information counteracting some of that. We can sort of argue with shops that are closing down about the Friars Walk 5 years, 7 years after it's been opened and all that. And I feel the issue here is really economic prosperity. You will have thriving shops when you have people who feel, they can spend, and that means obviously jobs and all that. So I know that for a number of years I've been banging on about inward investment, about things that are really game changers for Newport. And I'm wondering really here, I'm sort of giving our officers the opportunity to put me right on that, because I don't see really much in the way of inward investment that is making a difference for Newport. Now, I know, we'll be caught at some, like, the wafer fabs and all that, but I don't see that necessarily is making sort of a big change for a lot of people in Newport. Sometimes it seems to be more related to Cardiff, and things like that. So anyway, that's my worry about this. Otherwise, I feel a lot of the objectives, a lot of the themes are good. I think some of the work we've been doing on the environment and all that, is to be commended. But, my bugbear really is the economy and jobs for people in Newport, that actually, like we used to have. It may not be possible now. That is possible, I may be asking for too much, but if you go back sort of in the early 2000s, we used to have more relocation, more jobs come in, and that's not happening now. And it could be a UK issue, but I do find, when you compare us to some of the English cities, quite honestly, we have a long way to go. Thank you.
Economic regeneration, right. Thank you.
Chair. Okay, thank you, Councillor Rheoli. I think, one of your sort of latter statements rings true in that we're not unique in terms of the economic challenges that we face in city centres, town centres are all facing a contraction in terms of their size and their offer. I think, even if you go to our own capital city, you will see a number of vacant units in those. So that is a very present challenge that certainly we as officers are very aware of. I think it's interesting that Newport is still one of the the cities that has higher levels of inward migration on a daily basis a lot of inward commuters. So clearly there are jobs in the city. It's just how we enable that people living in the city to access them. Also, that's where the skills and education aspects do come in. And I think if you compare Newport to some of the other areas across South East Wales, we are holding our own in terms of those inward investment levels currently. So we're very aware of the economic challenges that we face in, but as we've always said, there are economic opportunities. And I think so when we come to look at the annual report of what's been achieved despite the pandemic, despite the other sort of external pressures that the areas are facing, we have delivered an awful lot. But taking on board your point in terms of jobs and how local people access the jobs, that's why I think the skills and education aspect is so important in terms of sustainable economic prosperity. Clearly, we are here today, scrutinising the corporate plan rather than the economic growth strategy, etc., etc. So, that's probably all I would want to say in response at this point in time. But yes, as officers, we're acutely aware of the need to flip some of the challenges that Newport and other areas face into opportunities.
Thank you. Yeah.
Can I just quickly come back? I mean, just to say that I've only seen recently, if you like, a communication from Matthew, and I welcome the soft landing thing. We obviously remain to be seen what that will be like, when we see the cabinet members report on it. But yeah, like I'm saying, we do see signs in lots of the things that have been identified in the draft report here, and they are much to be welcome, really. but let's hope, you know, that in the next 5 years, something will it translate. I think really we're desperate really for a game changer for Newport, I feel. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Baker Westhead.
Thank you. Yeah, as the other councillors have said, I also welcome the draft corporate wellbeing plan. And obviously this is new territory for me. It's my first term. It's been interesting reading. I'm obviously assuming from what I've been reading as well with this report that it's an overarching, quite a sort of a macro level report on what's going to be happening, and there'll be more detail with some of the other reports that come our way in this committee. But following on from what the other councillor just said, I'd like to also say, you know, maybe in terms of trying to improve the economic offer within Newport, I'm wondering whether there's any room with this in this report for consideration being given to things like the heritage offer. Heritage is quite something that I actually feel quite strongly about, and if we're looking for some sort of unique selling point really for Newport that could bring a whole sort of raft of employment opportunities. It's things such as well, obviously the Transporter Bridge, Newport Ship, and Caerleon, which obviously being a representative there, I'm quite keen on trying to promote as well. But I just feel that we've got a really strong historic offer, and that would tie in as well to the wellbeing goals. The 7 wellbeing goals, in particular Wales as a vibrant culture, thriving Welsh language, and also prosperous Wales and a resilient Wales. I think, you know, there's a lot that we can offer. We're the gateway into Wales as well, and maybe some consideration could be given to the heritage offer that we could really put forward to try to support the economy within Newport.
Thank you. Who's going to take this one?
Probably again, Chair. I think, Councillor, you know, you're absolutely right in that heritage is one very important pillar. You know, one very important pillar of our economic growth plans. And I think you'll see within the corporate plan that there is an intention to develop a cultural and heritage strategy. So as you said, obviously, you know, again, members will be aware, just walk ground on the Transporter Bridge work, and you know, if we reflect on how long that's taken 7 years from its sort of conception as a thought piece around how we're going to develop that to actually come into fruition. But you're right, you know, Newport has got such a lot to offer in terms of heritage. So again, as we move forward, economic growth strategy and the cultural strategy will pick up on those aspects in more detail. So yeah, totally support what you're saying.
I'd like to come back and say I'd applaud that, and I really, not just because you know, I'm representing Caerleon as a ward, but I actually moved to the Caerleon area myself because of the Roman heritage of that particular location. It really is a world-class heritage site. It's an incredibly significant feature. And that there's a report that came out several years ago that not many people may be aware of, the Thurley Review, which was commissioned by the Welsh Assembly, which really pushed the validity of Caerleon as an overall site. And I feel strongly that would be something that ought to be considered within that heritage offer, because it's something that could even, you know, if people were inclined to try to push it, become a World Heritage site. Obviously, there'd need to be infrastructure to support that as well, and to make sure anybody within the locality wasn't detrimentally impacted by, you know, additional traffic and that type of thing. But it's having visited numerous Roman sites around Europe, it is a very, very strong selling point for Newport that I hope will be considered in future. Thank you.
Hi. Another, again, great report. For me, I don't think there's going to be one golden bullet which is going to save the city. It's just not going to happen. We're not in that sort of environment anymore. And as you know, I have a business background, and for me, it's going after those little 1%ers. Because as soon as you get a few 1%ers, before you know it, you've then got 5% improvement, plus 8, and then 10, and then that is where the growth comes from. What I think we need to be, it doesn't seem to be very much about SMEs in there. For me, we
we do need to be attracting the SMEs into the centre. We do need to be looking at partnerships. We also need to be looking at ways to be brave with how we do this as well, not just shying away from something that looks a little bit difficult. And it's how we achieve, in every aspect of this report, is how we achieve that in the extremely difficult climate that we've got approaching us over the next 2 or 3 years, because we haven't really started to feel the effects yet, I don't believe. I think the public is only now starting to realise how difficult things are actually going to become. It's kind of, for me, it kind of feels like COVID should have felt, but without the support that we had, and we're not going to be getting that support, I don't think, from central government moving forward. So it's how we manage our ability to go after the opportunities, which may require some investment, but whilst also doing all of the things which we say we're going to be doing in this plan moving forward.
Yeah.
How do we do that?
Thank you. We'll go take this one.
Economies. Again, I think I would probably say, and we need to be careful, we're not straying off the corporate plan in general and going down into one sort of particular economic discussion, which would be better placed under place and corporate scrutiny and the economic growth strategy. Or again, what I say, Councillor Orton, is I totally agree. There isn't going to be one magic bullet, so there's got to be different creative ways of addressing some of the challenges we've got on. We do need to rely very heavily on our partners across One Newport, who help us, and we will be relying on them to help us deliver some of the aspects of our corporate plan through the One Newport plan also. So I totally agree. None of this is easy given the current context. I think, as we said, the last 2.5, 3 years were difficult. I think the next 2 years are going to be even more challenging.
I also do agree with Matthew's point about that we should get some people out on the street and actually talk to engage with a different demographic.
I think, Chair, that that's something that the team officers should do. There's something we need to take on board and back into partnerships and policy team. Okay, noted.
I note the answer and that Councillor Horton's question and sentiment would be better addressed to a different forum. Is there a mechanism for doing this? Not him necessarily having to attend, but for his question to be forwarded to the right scrutiny committee. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Alan Wavy, I notice you want to come back in again.
Thank you. Just to comment on the point also made by Councillor Baker Westhead. I think the cultural side to Newport is really, I feel, is not utilised fully. I mean, if I can just put a question, what's happened to the ship? I mean, we've got a unique find there, but we seem to have now, it's 20 years, I think, since that was found, and is going nowhere as it appears. It's an interesting archaeological project now, but I feel we should make more of it, and maybe the plan ought to sort of look at that. I mean, just a suggestion regarding the cultural dimension to Newport that I feel is probably not fully exploited. But what I was coming on, Chair, and this was on objective, sorry, where is it? Yeah, objective 2. Under the environment and infrastructure, where it says to project an enhanced biodiversity and environment of Newport's urban and rural communities, improving well-being and health. I mean, absolutely, there is no doubt that culture, that biodiversity does improve well-being and health. I feel is such an important thing. We had an excellent presentation about maybe 6 months ago, I can't remember precisely when, about what we can do to actually encourage more biodiversity, if you like, pockets and environments, especially within the urban part of Newport. And there seem to be so many possibilities there, about sort of using and the space under bridges and, you know, sort of curbsides and all kind of things. And yeah, I think, you know, we haven't heard much about that, but I think that's another area where we can really make Newport, you know, sort of unique, or maybe, you know, to take a good step towards that, and not just to develop those ideas that were put in the presentation. So I wonder whether you know, we can have a comment on that one. Thank you.
Of course.
Yeah, Paul Jones again. We councillor, so obviously we've done quite a lot of work on biodiversity over the last few years. Newport has bee friendly status, and particularly during the pandemic and with some extra investment, I think a lot of the public found comfort in some of our open spaces, and we've seen a lot of that retained. So yeah, I think this will be a core part of our strategy going forward. In terms of the detail on how those presentations can move forward, progress, those will form part of the service plan for environment and public protection, and we'll be giving you updates on those actions. But the team continue to work in that. We hope that will form a good part of the corporate plan going forward. But it's always a battle for space, isn't it? You know, we've got demand for housing. We've got a growing city. And so by, you know, making it a nice and pleasant public realm and enhanced biodiversity is an important counter that all things working together.
Okay, thank you. Are you content with the answer, Councillor Rheoli? Yeah. Okay, thank you, Councillor Bright.
I switched off. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, apologies. Come on. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yes. Thank you for the reply. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Bright.
And are we having a comment on the ship, Chair, please?
Well, Councillor on what I would say is this is about the corporate plan, not specific projects. So I don't think it'd be appropriate.
No,
to
I
have a
mean,
conversation about the ship
yeah.
specifically today, if that's okay. Happy to have a separate conversation, but I don't think it's appropriate for the discussion under this discussion, Chair, if that's okay.
Not see what it yet.
Yeah, I take your point, but I mean, you know, it's a unique thing for Newport, isn't it?
Thank you. Okay, Councillor Bright.
Yes, thank you. So referring to bullet point, sorry, objective 3, we talk about promoting the positive community and inclusion. I think we're doing that really well, and especially previously Pride in the Ports as an excellent example of that council working partnership. And Hill Carnival, we have from the police this week in council saying how well that went. The first one wasn't any issues there. And you know, we do these big events. We've got the food festival coming up. And I think these big events do, you know, they play an important part in inclusion. So my question would be, make sure we, obviously money is tight, but we still able to fund and support these big events that bring communities together with a really positive impact. Thank you.
Noted. Okay, thank you, Councillor Hall.
It's just a little thing. I don't like some of the terminology that you use in it. The things like to become, to create, if there are activities you're already undertaking and have been undertaken. To me, it kind of reads become an inclusive organisation. We are an inclusive organisation. I think you just need to find the right term which enhances what's already being done rather than to say, oh, we haven't done it, because it reads if we haven't done this before, we're going to do it.
From a negative to a positive, it's obviously.
I'm not a wordsmith. I will allow somebody with a greater education than I to come up with a solution.
Well, I think it's about not saying something started when actually it's a journey and we're part of it, so it's to begin for it. Yes.
Are we all done?
If you can just beg my indulgence, Chair, as a few people have talked about other issues in there, perhaps you could forward the comments. My major concern about lack of students in Newport, the way Newport's been treated has been pretty disgraceful. We talk about skills and education. It's a key platform, and I hope whichever forum is dealing with this, that we do put pressure on the university to deliver some of the promises they've made over the years.
You've really hit the nail on the head when you say put pressure on the university. That's all we can do. It's not proper functioning.
I don't know, because we gave them millions of pounds for the developments, both with the council gave them millions of pounds. And I don't know if there was a clause in there, legal thing, because there should have been a clause saying, okay, this is on the basis you're going to encourage you to keep million. But we did give them millions of pounds, and the regeneration company also gave them millions of pounds. So giving them lots of money on the basis they're going to provide lots of students, they haven't delivered. I don't know whether there's a clawback. Maybe it could be looked into. Maybe we can get some more millions back.
Yes, that's a very reasonable point. Okay. Councillor Rheoli, if you still got your hand up.
Yeah, Chair, just clarification on the comment by the Chief Exec. I brought the issue of the ship because it comes under 4 of Objective 1. That's why I brought that.
Okay, we note.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We all done? Okay, thank you very much for your attendance this morning.
Yeah.
Council make mistakes to work for the museum. Whether she needs to. You still work for the museum?
I'm on a career break at the moment, for 6 months.
I just didn't know whether you need their own interest.
Oh, apologies. Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to mention you in the meeting.
Is true, yeah.
Yeah, so, yeah, sorry. Yeah, I didn't even consider that. I do apologise. Yeah.
It's probably worth noting, Neil, in the councillor's interest in it. You're not making a decision on it, you're providing feedback on it. So when it comes to council, when the council is making a decision on the corporate plan, you may have to declare an interest if you're going to make a comment. Okay, does that make sense?
Yep. Sorry. The audio's breaking up a little bit. So could you just reiterate that? Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, councillor. You could hear me much better when I was sitting further away from the microphone. This committee's not making a decision; it's providing feedback. So it's probably just worth noting in the minutes that you have an interest, but you're just providing feedback on the corporate plan. When it goes to council, if you want to make a comment about the corporate plan at council, because it is making a decision, you have to declare an interest at that point. Is that okay?
Right. Yeah, I understand. That's given me some clarity. Thank you very much for that.
The rough rule of thumb is if in doubt, declare.
As a business owner, do you want me to declare an interest in the city centre? It's not really.
It's what she was talking about.
Yeah, I do apologise. I didn't think that that my thought process either was going to go down that route in the meeting that we just had.
Don't worry. It's fine. Thank you. Okay. Item 5 then, please. Corporate safeguarding annual report. Who's going to present, please?
Good morning. My name is Kim Bell. I'm the head of corporate safeguarding. There is, I'll just give a brief summary on the interim report. So the interim annual corporate safeguarding report was previously presented last year in July, I believe, before my time in Newport. So And the reporting cycle for the report has been postponed due to sort of changing scrutiny cycles and obviously the recruitment of a new head of corporate safeguarding. Respecting the wishes of the committee to provide only a streamlined and targeted information, revisions to the format and data presented have been made to this interim report, and is anticipated that with some further work with partner agencies such as the Gwener Safeguarding Board and advice from Welsh Government in terms of the draft guidance that they've produced this year, a final version of a report model will be presented in the future, probably within the next 2 years. So to summarise, overall, the local authority is compliant and meeting its duties regarding safeguarding practices for children and adults. It's acknowledged that services are still feeling the effects of post-pandemic, and referrals into the hub and FCT, first contact team, remain very high, with an increase of about 13.9% to the children's home in the last year alone. However, despite these increases, we've been generally effective in implementing the right decision or the right service at the right time for both children and adults via preventative services or early intervention pathways at the front door. Wherever possible, through these new models and ways of working, where Newport were a pilot of such practices. And regionally, the models of practice of multi-agency hubs, prevention step-up, step-down processes, and education collaborations are now being adopted and implemented. It's acknowledged that the authority has still got some way to go to improve some of the mandatory training compliance targets, particularly when benchmarking to other local authorities and agencies, particularly for the VODA SB compliance, that's the violence against women, domestic abuse and sexual violence, which does carry some Welsh Government non-compliance fines. The continued low compliance for mandatory safeguarding training courses by employees, including volunteers and elected members, the matter that we are urgently looking to address to ensure that the completion of the courses is undertaken, and failure to do so is met by necessary employee conduct where appropriate. It is of course accepted that the face-to-face training has been unavailable due to the pandemic, and for a long time, which has significantly reduced the uptake of some of the courses. However, we're looking to make this less of a barrier and moving forward with an action plan for 22-23. We're asking Scrutiny to be aware that the rotates for volunteer training and face-to-face training commencing in September are not accurate in terms of them being started yet, but they are due immediately. I realise it's October tomorrow. But we're asking for actions in future work to be endorsed. These are outstanding rollover, where appropriate prioritisation is given to this work around the mandatory training compliance, the governance and the recording of safeguarding data, for more effective benchmarking and reporting, and including developing a more robust self-assessment tool, which is regionally aligned. Looking at the work of what WICIS can do, our recording system, to get some more kind of live data around some area referrals from the designated safeguarding people, and looking at aligning some of the Welsh Government safeguarding training framework, which is rolling out, we heard this week, in the new year. And also looking at that digital footprint that we talked about previously and the strategies around that to make sure that we've got enough information available on the internet for citizens of Newport to understand what our roles, remit and commitment is to safeguarding. That's the summary, Chair. If there's anything else that you would want to.
Thank you. Is anybody else going to contribute?
Yeah, I think it's understood.
Okay, over to members then. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. So, thank you for the report, and pretty much mentioned was pick up on right. So regarding the training, I've read to Amber, but just sort of drilling down into that really. You mentioned just wondering how the training is delivered. You talked here about digital training, but then in the action point, you've got the production of a booklet. So is the training, is it a video they watch and answer questions on, or is the booklet still in? I know obviously face-to-face training hasn't happened, but I mean, how are we actually ensuring that that's mandatory training and how it's delivered?
The mandatory training is delivered via an e-learning module.
Right.
But what we have done is cater for people who aren't necessarily desk-based, computer-based. So we've got school cleaning staff, for example, and we do face-to-face training for that sort of cohort of employees who would not necessarily be doing their day job looking at a computer. So we've got a two-pronged approach to it, but obviously COVID has really impacted on that being deliverable. I think we're looking at rescheduling that now, obviously within that we can go back into doing that kind of work. We've got some staff and the line to look at it, but running alongside that is Welsh Government's training framework that's come out, which is going to standardise such a lot of safeguarding training across the social care sector, for including health and police colleagues. So everybody will be required to do a sort of tiered approach to training, and that will really give us a boost to kind of get in there and do a tiered approach in the work that we need to do in terms of everybody's responsibility. Absolutely, safeguarding is, but I think some people, the example I often use is the person that delivers pens to Civic would need less training than somebody who's in a school. So it's about nuanced approaches to understanding what it is the basic requirements are, how we deliver them, how we record that delivery, and then how we benchmark to show improvement.
Thank you.
Can I just add, so Mary Ryan from Adults, and also in terms of the Welsh Government Violence Against Women, Domestic Abuse, Sexual Violence, the national training framework that they instruct us to deliver on. I think what we have done over the last couple of years is when the pandemic happened, it wasn't about training stopping or saying, God, we know it's important. We were still out there delivering services and receiving referrals, but we actually went to that sort of online portal of what we can do. And as Finn has just said, depending on your position, your role, it's about sort of making sure we've got it streamlined in terms of what it is that we expect for you to complete. But on that, what we did do is we did some of the Welsh Government required training for our sort of senior leaders and chief execs and councillors was actually a whole day. We performed very badly at that in terms of a council because it was very hard. We weren't on our own, that was across Wales, because it was very hard for everybody to give up a whole day to go to conference centre to do that. So what we did is we delivered a whole load of 4 different sort of two-hour sessions virtually, and we had a really excellent attendance from our councillors and our senior executive in Cardiff. So we're doing in Newport. So we're actually doing better at some of the areas of training than other authorities. But yeah, it's a priority going forward to always make sure that it's top of the agenda.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I welcome the report. I welcome the fact that you have listened since last year and made amendments. Again, we had things on staffing structures and before. It's not our job to tell you how you structure your organisation. Although Neil, you might like to note that we've still got that in our remit on our recommendations. We talked about training. I think that one thing I had to do double take on was a number of referrals. It's gone by almost 40% over the last 3 years. Is that 11,000 referrals in Newport?
Actually, going ahead of Children's Services.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed it is. We've seen a significant increase in referrals per year. So we're averaging a significant amount compared to previous years, and indeed the complexity of the referrals is a lot higher than the previous.
I mean, that's a staggering percentage with the population so small in Newport. I mean, it's quite. So I think there are statistics in there, but roughly of all those referrals, what's the percentage? You need to take action, which ones?
So at the moment, the data over the last few months, we've seen a number that we've been referring on to preventative services. So in terms of a percentage, I suppose it's probably over the last few months, I think it's about 50% that we're referring then on to early intervention services. But prior to that, it was actually significantly higher amount that we were actually taking through in terms of accepting through statutory services.
Can I comment from an adult's perspective, very Ryan? And it's the same. And I think sort of post-pandemic, what we are seeing is whereas prior to the pandemic, the referrals coming through was about sort of 80-20 from adult services. In terms of 80% we could signpost or we could do early intervention and prevention, but actually 20% was more complex people with additional care and support needs that we're going to need more assessment and more support going forward. We're seeing that change now, and what's happening, we believe, is that actually people have not come forward through the pandemic for lots of reasons, and now we're picking people up with they're much more poorly, their care and support needs are much higher, their care needs are higher in terms of what they need to sustain themselves in the community. So yeah, it's a changing picture, but actually it's a more pressured picture in terms of what we can do as statutory social services.
Thank you. And just a matter of interest, has this large government scheme come in for looked after children when they leave care, funding wise?
Yes, so
Has it happened? It's starting about it.
yes, it started in July, and it's working quite well at the moment. So we received support from Citizens Advice Bureau. They're sitting within our offices as well to support our young persons advisors in ensuring that the money is spent as it should be.
I assume that's being monitored.
Yeah.
Sorry, the point about the figures and things in the reports, if they wanted percentages, I think you would help. Because 11,000 in London, then it would be 11,000 in Newport as a percentage of the population, bearing in mind. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Is anybody else going to pick up on training? If they are, I'll hold off until I see if the questions are being asked. Not sure you. Okay. Some years ago, Rheoli will probably have forgotten it by now, I asked about subjective or objective training. And I think the answer I got back was we trust our staff, so we don't tend to do objective training. In a professional social services environment, is that necessarily satisfactory? Because I'm thinking of your CPD requirements and on the professional social service workers, how many hours or days a year are they supposed to pick up? And how do you measure this? Because I know the Engineering Council tries to scrutinise what I do, some difficulty, but I also like to pick up on some of the data that you've presented to us, because on page 9 of your report, page 33 of the report, and there are other examples, but we'll just highlight on this one. E-learning information security training by teams, by staff members. And you tell us how many staff members have done this training, but you don't give us a percentage. So, 167 staff members might be a very high number. I have no idea. I'm pretty sure that 18 is a pretty low number, but, we do need to have this information put in front of us in some way that we can discern how well you're doing in training your staff. Could that be the case for future reports, please? If you would comment on it, generality of CPD.
In terms of all our qualified social work staff, we have they're all registered individuals, and every 3 years they have to re-register. And as part of that re-registration is actually they have to produce their training plans, what they've done, that it's signed up by their manager, so there is a sort of assurances in that. In terms of our unqualified, but our social care staff, from a residential perspective, in our residential homes, there is similar requirements for them now to be registered and also take up that training. So they're starting to come in, but from a statutory perspective, that's been the case for as long as I've been a social worker, but that's also rolling out now into other areas that maybe weren't so prescribed before.
We talked about the turnover of social worker staff, which has traditionally been quite high in Newport. So when we employ now, are their CPD or their registration always up to date?
Yeah.
And when does the clock start ticking for this 3 years? And from the time we employ them or from their previous employer?
Often it's a mixture. If you come across and you were registered a year ago, well, we check that they are registered, we check their DBS, so that's all sort of onboarding process to people in terms of making sure everything is correct, and then that, you know, they don't go out and they don't start working with anybody until all that is confirmed.
Anyone else?
I would just like to say thank you, because obviously you do essentially horrible jobs. But so as in you deal with horrible situations, like you do bad jobs. And it's just something that I could never do. And just looking at the statistics and the numbers, I struggle to understand how people can be that way. So thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Thank you very much for your attendance.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Okay, then if we can go back to our conclusions. At 3 o'clock, we were asked to consider the draft well-being objectives and the strategic priorities of the council, and to provide comment and recommendations on the draft corporate plan. So dealing with the third part first, are we content with the priorities that they've set? Any comment? So we see, are we content?
I'm hoping our comments will be reflected in the minutes.
Well, to Neil now,
Yes,
I'm sure they will.
some of the comments that I've taken is your comments, Councillor Evans and Councillor Horton, in regards to having people input on clipboards in the city centre, and trying to get their opinion of more like diverse groups. Also take copied in Councillor Big Westhead's comments about regarding the heritage offer to try and support the economy. Got the Chief Exec's comment about taking on board about the jobs and how local people can access jobs. Councillor Horton's comment about some of the verbiage in the report as well, just to try and get the correct terms to enhance what's been done. But was there any other comments or recommendations the committee would like me to take forward?
There's a question, if you might.
Yeah.
When the Chief Exec mentioned that the regeneration report was not really as part of this report we've received this morning, are we to expect that at overview and scrutiny, or is it to go to another forum?
I think with the economic growth strategy, that normally comes to place and corporate committee. I'm sure it come the previous year. I'll make sure that is the case. So I'll make committee members aware of that as well, which committee it comes to.
I'm sure if there were references about the comments about heritage and the university just mentioned, would be helpful if they were ordered to the relevant committees.
And you had a specific question, Matthew, about whether there was any possible clawback.
Yeah, I mean it's a long shot, but if you do something, you give somebody a lot of money to do something, and they don't fulfill their objectives. And
I check to see which service area deals with that to forward that.
yeah,
As well.
you work for the university.
No, the college. The college went.
Claire, you content?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I mean, I was hoping the issue of the ship will be included as part of the, sort of the cultural heritage or that sort of thing, is, to increase the ability for Newport to be a destination city, you know, for tourism, that sort of thing. So, you know,
Your manifesto, meet Dad. It's in your manifesto, you're okay.
okay.
Matthew had already asked that it be included anyway. Okay, so moving on to the second report we had this morning. We're asked to consider the annual report and the executive summary.
Some of the comments that I take from this, Councillor Evans comment that you welcome that the team had listened since last year and made the appropriate amendments. And you also mentioned about the percentages of the figures would be helpful. For
Yeah,
the report.
I think it would, because 11,000 out of 2.5 million is different from 11,000 out of 156, whatever it is, it's any percentage.
Well, like I say, it's not 11,000 out of maybe. But then maximum 40,000.
Well, so you're children, yeah.
Yeah, so you know, we're looking at.
It's always helpful to have percentages and everything.
And what might be good is to see whether or not that is, if it's possible, how much of that is the same person, the same child.
Yeah.
Because it might be the same child being reported on every week.
Yeah.
As if it's single incident children, the figure is absolutely horrendous.
Yeah. Well, it's horrific anyway.
Yeah.
And sorry, just for, I think it says in our, what we're supposed to consider, it's already got the recommendation we should look at the structures.
Yes.
On there, which they've removed, but we haven't removed it, so we need to remove it as well. That makes sense. I forgot what page it's on now, but you're right at the beginning, I think.
Was that in the cover report?
Yeah, that'll be in the cover report. So
that's page 21 of my agenda.
the role of the committee is considering the report is, and then it mentions consider whether the structure of the legal safeguarding infrastructure is appropriate. That's something which we're not qualified to do. We agree that we, not our job to comment on structures.
No problem.
So they're appropriate, and they've removed it in their report. But we stick it on.
No problem. Ensure in future cover reports that part is not as an area of focus.
Yeah, because it's
Yeah.
that's the channels.
No,
organisational structure and operation area.
When Finn reported, she told us that they were compliant in most major areas, with the exception of the voluntary registered, I think.
Was there any other further comments or recommendations that you'd like to make for the heads of service for this report, or are you happy with what's been said?
Well, so sorry.
Yep. Yeah.
What about the training issue, Paul? You can.
Yes. So we only see the report annually, don't we?
Yeah.
So I think it'd be helpful due to the seriousness of the lack of training. We could have a mid-report solid on that figure on how they're achieving that target of training. Maybe would that be acceptable?
Yeah, well, we can ask for an update.
Yeah, it's on update here.
And that report to contain meaningful figures, not just numbers that, you know, they're not telling us how many staff they're employing. We can't even work out the percentages.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I think it's worth. So your point about taking them for the job they do.
Yes.
Yeah, there is. As in, they do horrific jobs, they have horrific.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Please make that. It might be worth, if possible, when we're going to break the numbers down, give it some meaningful data, so we can understand what the FTE is, rather than they might say they got 500 staff.
Yeah.
But there might only be 100 FTE.
Yeah. Absolutely. So, you know, they've got to be the meaningful.
Yes. And then if you do have a lot of part-time staff and you say, well, we won't go and do a day's training, it becomes quite difficult. It's a different kettle of fish then, isn't it?
So, again, so
The only reason I say that is because so much paperwork. Welsh government say, what is your FTE? How many people do you employ?
Those ones are relatively easily found. We're not asking for something obscure. Even if at the last meeting, we found that there was a discrepancy between the number employed on one page and the number employed on another page. Okay, so we're content with the safeguarding. We've got the comments here. Right, over to you then, please.
So, for the scrutiny advisor report, just taking a look at Sam's agenda on page 67 is the action sheet from the last meeting on the 23rd of September. The conclusions that have been completed, so they've been sent to the officers, so I'll collate them together and send them to the committee. Sent the previous information as well on the 23rd. See, you haven't updated the table yet, but I know that we have sent the recommendations off, so we'll make sure this table is completed. The next committee meeting is on the 21st of October. That will be the annual compliments, comments and complaints report, and also the annual corporate wellbeing self-assessment report. That's a new requirement for the LGPA. And then we've also got the 2nd December planning and performance risk management framework. The meetings will slowly start getting up quite because I know it's been pretty manic for this committee over the last couple of weeks. That's everything on our side.
For the committee, are we content when we're meeting now? The picture we've got up on the screen in front of us, I appreciate Claire and Victor can't see it, but that's all the public can see of us. Yeah.
We can do additional testing in committee room 1, where we would normally have a committee meeting anyway on a live event. We're hoping that on a live event, the camera view will be slightly closer. But again, we can relay our findings back to the committee, but ultimately is what you would prefer. If you prefer to have it in the council chambers, I know it's obviously the larger space. But it's whatever your preference is, we can accommodate for you.
Thoughts?
Well, the public, the image the public sees obviously is much bigger than that little one we've got there.
Yeah.
How much more effort is it to be in chambers, for example? Is it
with the chambers? We would need because it'll be one of the scrutiny advisors next to the chair, so there'll be one for the governance team. You have someone to operate the camera, as we would in full council meeting, and we would also have someone to operate the hands up facility as well, to take everything off. So it would be, I think, an additional governance team officer to do it. Whereas if we do live in the committee room, it's just one less officer. So, but of course, whatever the committee would prefer, we can do the additional testing to ensure, it would look better for the public and for committee members joining remotely.
Could I propose then that we each go have a look and see at the recording and see whether we feel that it's suitable and make a decision from that?
Okay, that's definitely. Oh yeah, Taylor's got a live field assignment. So
now we're still live. We're still live, I mean.
Yeah. I just don't want us wasting resources necessarily.
I did look at the last.
Most of my name's in lights, headlights, so that's the important thing. What are you saying?
That's all I'm saying. You can do an either, regardless of the number of governance team, it requires, but it's entirely what committee would prefer.
Again, but we also don't know if somebody's using this, they may well have pinned the main screen so they can see the main screen.